Meeting to order. Commissioner Bennett. We're doing roll call.
Here.
Commissioner Horner.
Here.
Commissioner Wigren.
Here.
Commissioner Patillo.
Here.
Commissioner Retberg.
Here.
And Commissioner Raber.
Here.
Can I have a volunteer to run the meeting until we vote on a chair and vice chair?
Regular minutes from the prior session, even though you guys weren't here? No. No?
Yes.
Yes, okay. It's just something we always do. It's the written minutes of our last meeting. So next time we meet, we'll have the whole minutes of this meeting. So do I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Are there any public comments?
There are not any public comments.
Okay.
And can I, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. I got a text from the city clerk. They're having a hard time hearing folks in IT. So just make sure, I see your mics are on, but just make sure they're close enough and you're talking right to them. They're kind of fiddly sometimes, so.
Okay.
And she'll keep texting me if you guys don't, so.
Okay. Now we got to do the oath of office. I'll hand that to, I believe, Mr. Cooper. Or no, you? Okay.
So the first one I'm going to do is Commissioner Bennett. If you could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, John Bennett, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of laws.
I will support the Constitution of the United States and
Laws
laws
of the state of Arizona,
of the state of Arizona.
that I will bear the true faith and allegiance to the same
I will bear the
true faith
I'm sorry, I have no idea. Long day. And
that I will bear the true faith and allegiance
I will bear the true faith and allegiance
to the same and defend them
to the same and
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
faithfully and impartially discharge
of the office of Commissioner
of the office of Commissioner
for the Municipal Utility Commission
for the Municipal Utility Commission
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God. Can we hand that to him so he may sign that?
The bar is pretty low.
Hey, Hannah, how many are you swearing in?
23rd.
You can do them all at the same time.
Oh,
Yeah, and they just say, I say your name. Yes, I apologize. And then they'll just say their name and then they can just follow along. That might move things along a little bit quicker. I would not make a repeat. Okay. But
all right. Our next ones will be Ken Horner, Cullen Patillo, Greg Raber. If you could all raise your right hand. And then Ken, we'll start with you. I, Ken Horner. I, Cullen, and I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
That I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Arizona,
that I will bear the true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the Office of Commissioner for the Municipal Utility Commission according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Yeah. Okay, next item on the agenda is the appointment of chairperson and vice chairperson for 2025. Would anybody like to take on either role?
Who are the two commissioners that have been here?
Sound like the two demands.
I nominate Tyler for chair.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Does anyone want to do vice chair?
I'm willing, I'm brand new, but I'm willing to help out.
Okay. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, ayes have it. Now it's Tyler, take it over?
Well, next item on the agenda. Discussion and possible action. We have an item for open meeting law and parliamentary procedure training. Mr. Cooper, does that go to you?
That would be me.
All right.
So what we need to do is there'll be a slide presentation as soon as Hannah can get it showing up there on the screen. It's just training we're going to do every year. It's just to remind you folks of the open meeting law, parliamentary procedure, some conflict of interest stuff. It's something that we need to do basically the first meeting that some of you folks are being sworn in. It's part of the state statute that says everybody has to go through this type of training. So if we can get a next slide, and I'll go through this pretty quickly. So open meeting law is just basically the public policy is that these meetings need to be open to the public to make sure the public can participate. As you see, we have somebody out here in the audience to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. It's a transparency issue, and it's to build trust between the public and the commissions and the council and just government overall. Next. So, and it's all meetings of the public body, and as an appointed commissioner, you are part of the public body now. The city council is public body, you guys are public body. And as it says, all persons that are allowed to not participate, they're allowed to attend and listen to the deliberations. In some instances, they may be able to participate, such as a call to the public or if there's a public hearing or something. And it basically, the big bold is just that everything needs to be conducted in public. Next. As it says, it just protects and preserves the right to participate in government. And as it said, better informed citizenry builds trust between the government and the citizens. Next. You're the ones that have to comply. You're part of the public body, as I said earlier. Next. A meeting, this is always an interesting one, is it's basically no matter how you communicate or how you get together, a quorum of you is 4. So let's go to the next one, because I think I have a listing. I keep getting text from our clerk. All right, I don't know what she's texting me. Motions and seconds. I don't know if we did that, but we'll move on. The majority of the members of the commission, again, that's 4 out of 7. Vacant positions don't reduce the quorum. Next. So how you can meet is in person or through these various means. And what that means is if you have a website, social media, and you say, hey, I like this project, I'm going to vote for it 100%. and then 3 of you jump onto that posting and you comment or you like it or you say, yeah, I'm going to do that as well, that becomes a quorum, and you've just had an open meeting law violation because you've made a determination and decision or said what you're going to do. So that's why you need to be careful about social media. And this goes again as just talking in person as well. So as it says, you really need to be careful about sending emails and other electronic communication to other folks just to make sure that you're not running into this type of situation. And as it talks about a serial meeting, if I send you an email, or if one of you send an email to somebody else in the commission, and then he keeps sending that same email, that could become a violation of the open meeting law. So when you get emails from staff or whomever, and you're gonna make a comment, don't hit reply to all, just hit reply to the person who originally sent it. Next. Splintering the quorum is obviously when you're having those discussions in less than a quorum, but then one of those, so 3 of you have a discussion about an item, and then one of you goes and talks to a 4th person, that's open meeting law violation. That's kind of splintering the quorum, is trying to avoid all 4 of you being in person, but still communicating that information. You really don't want to do that. Next. Basically, you have to have 24 hours notice for a public meeting to occur, and that basically means you have to have an agenda, and it's got to be posted, and the public needs to be aware of it. Next. This is basic information about the agenda. As you look at your agenda, you see that these things are on there. That just, again, allows the public to know where and when, and then what exactly is going to be talked about. If it's not on the agenda, you don't get to talk about it. Sometimes you have to be careful when there is an item that you're talking about on the agenda, but then you diverge off of that and get too tangential. You need to be able to rein that in and keep talking about what's specifically on the agenda. And the chairperson, that's going to be your job to make sure everybody's complying with that and keeping them straight. And I know Mike will help, and Hannah and Teddy will help keep you guys in line too. Next. As I just said that, so let's go to the next one. Call to the public. Basically, call the public is you allow somebody to come up there and talk about something that's in the purview of this commission. When they say something, all you get to do is it says you can sit in silence, refer that item to staff to look into it, or ask the staff to put it on the next agenda for the discussion. But you don't want to respond. The only time you can respond is if they get up there and they criticize you and call you all sorts of names. You technically can respond. My advice is don't respond, because you're not going to solve the problem, and you're just going to end up in a situation you might try and create a dialogue. It's best to let somebody, if they want to vent about you, let them vent. If it's something that's totally disruptive to the meeting, that's a different story. You can just say, hey, we're going to recess the meeting. We're going to sit in there till this person moves on, or they cool down, or if you have to call law enforcement to pull them out. You just want to be careful about how we interact. We can do time limits. Generally what we do with our meetings, it's about a 3-minute time. And obviously Hannah or Teddy's going to run that to keep everybody on course. Next. I just said all that. Like I said earlier, they have the right to listen, attend, videotape, record. They just can't disrupt or speak unless it's in those specific situations. Next. So if you have an open meeting law violation, there can be sanctions. I have never seen a sanction above just saying we need to educate the boards or commission. But worst case scenario, if you do it intentionally to avoid some reason, you want to mislead the public or something, you could be kicked off the commission, or the council could be kicked off. There can be fines. And what will happen is if there's a violation and someone reports to the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General will let me know. I will respond to the Attorney General by saying, hey, I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to give him some remedial training, because that's the most important thing. We've had open meeting law violations occur that have either been said they weren't a violation or that they were, but it's always been dealt with by just some basic remedial education about OML. Next. Conflict of interest. So I don't know where you work or what your business is, what your families do, what your investments are, but conflict of interest aren't a dirty word. It just basically means if you have some kind of an interest in whatever is before the public body, before you, that's ownership, or it's a monetary interest, or your family, just say, hey, I have a conflict, I'm gonna step aside. You can go back in the back room while that item's being talked about. You just want to avoid that discussion. And then Hannah will get some paperwork from the clerk's office that you'll fill out and just say, I have a conflict, and that's why I'm stepping out of this position. If you have a question, I already got a question earlier, just give me a call or talk to staff. We'll make sure we can sort it out so we can figure out what's going on. Next. So the conflict, as I said, it's gonna be money or some kind of ownership interest, and it can involve, like I say, your family as well. So you just want to be aware of those types of situations. Next. Then they have what's called a remote interest, and we'll go to the next slide. There's this list of these different types of remote interests that I'm not going to go through, but it's basically an out that sometimes you're going to have some kind of an interest, but it's going to be determined to be a remote. Like if you have shares of some corporation, but it's less than 3% of the corporation for profit, there's these big definitions that you kind of run through. That'll step back and say your interest is remote. Next. The one that we see a lot is that one, it's kind of in the middle under, I think it's a J up there. It says that of a member of a trade, business, occupation, or profession. So that means if you're an electrician and for some reason there's an issue coming up, that will affect electricians. Well, if there's more than 10 electricians in the community, then your interest is remote because it's gonna affect all of those groups. But if you're like the only electrician, or there's only 2 electricians, well, then you have a bigger say in that information. So it'd be best for you to step out of that decision and let it take place without you. But like I say, there's a number of them. We'll make sure you get a copy of this presentation so you can look through that. And again, if you have any questions, just give me a holler. Next. So that's the statutes where this stuff is located. And again, it just says call the city clerk or call my office and we can sort it out. And I would say you guys have, there's some commissions that maybe don't have something that's more legally binding. Some of them don't, but you guys have one. You're making some recommendations for these utility connections. So it's important to make sure you're aware of the situation. Next. Super basic parliamentary procedure. It's something we already done, but I think the clerk said we might have missed a couple things. But basically it's just the rules of conduct to make sure everybody's heard and decisions are made without confusion. Next. So when you're doing this, you're gonna make a motion. We've already done motions. You just gotta make sure you have the floor. Make sure nobody's talking so it's clear. Address the chairperson. Wait for them to recognize you. You make your motion. Make it really clear and say that I move that we approve this rather than I move that we do not do something, because that just becomes a little more confusing and people don't, if you say I move we do not do something, and then they say nay to it, they're not sure what they're doing. You get those double negatives in there. So just make sure it's more of an affirmative thing. Make sure your motion is seconded. I think the clerk said we might have missed a second on something, but I think we're okay. Once you have your motion seconded, you get to vote on it. If there's no second, that motion is lost and you have to do something else. Next. So once it's seconded, the chairperson, make sure you restate the motion so we understand what's actually being voted on. You just say it really clear. Then you can either debate the motion again, discuss it some more if you want, or you just vote for it. And then once the chair asks for a vote, it's just yes or no. This differs from Robert's Rules. Some of you may be aware of Robert's Rules of Order. It's very strict and very procedural. We don't do that. The city has opted out of closely following Robert's Rules of Order. We do this, it's a little more relaxed because I think it effectuates much better communication. And if you don't know all of Robert's Rules of Order, somebody can abuse that, or you may not know how to challenge those types of situations. It's a book like this big. I hate Robert's Rules of Order. It's very confusing. So it's nice just to be able to say what we mean what we say, and just get it done. I think that's the last thing. No, it's not. Oh, it's just me rephrasing everything. So, and be courteous. That's the nice thing. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, on Robert's, what point do you amend them?
You can amend a motion after a motion's been made. So an amendment to a motion is a secondary motion. So if you make a motion that you want to approve something with some conditions, you get your second, but someone wants to add a different condition on top of it, you can make a motion to say, I would like to amend the original motion by adding this new condition. Then what you would do is you would vote on that motion to amend first. Then you would vote on the original motion. You can allow discussion on the second one. I haven't seen that happen too much. We sometimes play it a little fast and loose, and sometimes if we get a motion on the floor, and then there's discussion that says, hey, maybe we want to rethink about what we're doing, the council will sometimes just say, hey, let's start over. It does not follow Robert's Rules of Order, but that original motion is withdrawn, and then they kind of start over. Sometimes that makes it really clear, and sometimes doing that avoids that legal. You can be very aggressive with the rules, and if you know the rules, you can be much more aggressive on getting what you want. This kind of avoids that situation, but it is available to make amendments to a motion. That was a long way to say when you do it, so. Any other questions?
Just another reminder, if you guys could please speak in your microphone, IT is having a very hard time hearing.
So we're all getting yelled at. Yeah. That's all you need from me?
Chairman, is it Wigrin?
Wigrin.
Wigrin. I would just like to give some advice, take it or not. I'm very unfiltered sometimes. I am not on social media. That solves everything as far as conflicting on open meeting. So take that into consideration.
Thank you, Councilman Savage. And thank you, Mr. Cooper. Moving on to the agenda, under new business items, item 3D, we have the Airway Avenue Storage Water Service. Staff, would you like to present on that?
I just have to find it. I might need you to do that. There we go.
Which one you want first, parcel?
Okay.
Well, if you just click them, they're right there.
Okay, great. I can see that. Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners, this is a real simple request for water service. The city's utility regs say that all requests for water service have to be approved by council, but they first come to the Municipal Utility Commission. This parcel is on the corner of Pinal and Airway. It's going to be a storage facility. It's a real simple connection. They already have an existing 8-inch line. They're just going to connect directly to it using a T and a valve. So there's really no extension of the public water system on the property. It's just water service. I've reviewed their plans, and the recommendation from our office is to go ahead and approve it. If you have any questions.
Procedural question. Are we approving or advising by the council?
Actually, that's a good point. The commission makes recommendations, but final approval is always by council.
Oops. God, how did that go on? Sorry. I'll make a motion that we approve the Avenue Storage Water Service per staff's recommendation. Second.
Aye.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Thank you, staff. Moving on to item number 4, reports. There was a report from the last meeting about sewer and extensions and paybacks. On the meeting that occurred November 18th, the commission asked for a report summarizing the city's policies, other cities' policies on sewer extensions, the rate of paybacks on sewer extensions, and city participation in sewer extension. Does staff have a report for the commission?
I do, Chairman. We sent the report, it's a written report that we sent out with the agenda. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to look at it and review it or read it. I don't want to read you the whole thing. I think I'll just kind of go through some highlights here. The first thing I did in the report is present reasons for why we want people to connect to the sewer as opposed to being on septic systems. While a septic system works, it's good. When it doesn't work, it presents a potential public health issue. The city doesn't really have any way of monitoring that or knowing when a septic system fails. We have to kind of rely, it's a sort of self-reporting thing. So that is a public health incentive for getting people to connect. I discussed in the report our extension policy. Basically, developers for subdivisions have to connect all of the parcels to the public sewer system. So if you're doing a big subdivision, sometimes you have to extend the sewer like over miles sometimes, over long distances. And then obviously we allow developers to do a payback. There's a payback agreement that they can enter into with the city. For individual home builders, if you're within 500 feet of an existing sewer, you're required to connect. As long as it can be served by gravity. There's sometimes that the distance is right, but the flow is going the wrong direction or the contours are going the wrong direction. We don't require them to connect for those reasons. And as with large-scale developers, the city affords the same opportunity to individual home builders for a payback agreement. We went and did some research to see what other communities do with this issue. We found that Lake Havasu City, Bullhead, and Phoenix, their threshold distance is somewhere between 250 and 300 feet, depending on who you look at. One thing we did find that I thought was really interesting is that some municipalities actually require homeowners to connect to the system if the main crosses their frontage. This is true for Lake Havasu City, it's true for Bullhead City, it's also true for Flagstaff. In fact, Flagstaff pretty much doesn't allow any septic systems within our city limits. So there's some communities that have pretty strict policy. The rate of payback is really low, as you can imagine. If people aren't required to connect, then they'll sit on their septic system all day, and the payback agreement expires in 20 years, and so the percentage of paybacks is less than 15%. With regard to city-funded sewer extensions, in our CIP we have some money to do sewer extensions. Those are usually prioritized by staff. If we have some sewer lines where the line is shallow, really shallow manholes, and nobody can actually connect to them because you can't extend it any further, we'll go do a project to extend the sewer system. As with everything, there's nothing new under the sun. All of this has been discussed with previous commissions, previous city engineers. I did attach some meeting minutes from some previous meetings. One noteworthy meeting in 2013, the previous city engineer, Greg Henry, discussed this very same item with the commission. They talked about the fact that we don't require people to connect, and the fact that if you don't make people connect, then it's not really it's not a payoff for anybody. It's not a payoff for residents. If they have to extend the sewer system, it's not a payoff to the city. For us either, if we go build a new trunk line and nobody connects to it. There is a project list in the October 2014 minutes. Some of those have been done, some have been talked about. I've been the city engineer for a little less than a year now. So the way I understand it is some of these projects are sort of in between design phase and construction phase, or planning phase and design phase. It's something that we could definitely look into. I know that this is my second year to be in the budget cycle, and we talked about this last year. The list, I think, has just been overlooked, mainly because people have been so busy doing other projects. But it's something we could definitely look into. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Have you considered the kind of carrot and stick approach to having people on septic connect to sewer? Because, state law I think, would allow the city of Kingman to pass a local ordinance, a stricter one, where you could do things like require that people that wish to remain on septic prove that their system is actually meeting the treatment criteria outlined in the Arizona Administrative Code, which is, I think it's a 99.9% removal of pathogens 1 foot into the soil from the leach field. And I think you could require them to prove that every year.
That's a good suggestion. I actually have had a discussion with the city manager and with our finance director about possibly coming up with a program to help people connect. I talked to a contractor to find out if we've got about 500 or so parcels within the city limits where the homeowner has the sewer line right out in front of their property and hasn't connected yet. And so given that, I asked a contractor about how much per connection it would cost for somebody to do that. The expensive part is actually abandoning the septic tank. There's a certain way you got to do that, and I think to abandon the tank and build a tap to the main and connect is about $6,000 per connection. That's without a payback. If there's a payback on the lot, it's more, obviously. I think the average payback is probably a couple $1,000 per lot. So I talked to our finance director, and the discussion isn't over yet. We talked about the possibility of maybe getting a loan. It may be worth it financially to get a loan to help people connect, and then over a period of years through sewer revenues, you could recoup the expenses. I do think at some point it would be beneficial to the city to sort of make an ordinance where everybody has to connect. That helps the issue with it not being worthwhile to do extensions if nobody's connected to it. So, but your approach of making them prove it every year is not a bad idea. So that's something we could also consider.
What about when you're faced with a conflict between what the city's desire is that people hook up that are within 500 feet of a sewer line, and when Mojave County's ordinance says we're not going to require you to hook up unless you're 100 feet from a sewer line out in North Kingman, what does the city think of that, and how do they act, or what's their policy on reacting to that?
Well, I had a discussion about this with the city manager the other day. I think the current policy is to allow the county to use their discretion, their threshold limits as far as who's got to connect and who doesn't. I think the county's point is that all of our regs are adopted in city ordinance. And so the ordinance would really only apply to connections within the city. It's a little bit of a tricky situation because there are utilities. And so we want our utility regs to apply to all of our water and sewer connections. So it's something that maybe there's still more discussion to be had, but I think right now we're just letting the county make the call.
So what do we do right now if somebody's septic system fails and it needs to be replaced. Do we require them to hook to our city sewer?
Yeah, the current regulation is that if your septic system fails, you have to connect if you're within 250 feet.
Okay.
The problem with that, of course, is that we may never know whether they fail or not. There's a lot of, you guys, I think the last time we talked about this, you called them weekend septic repairs.
Yeah.
Where basically somebody calls a contractor and they come out and they fix it, which I see Colin shaking his head. Usually doesn't work, but it works well enough, I guess, for them to get by. So we have a policy. If you fail, you got to connect, but it can be difficult to enforce accurately.
It's nearly impossible.
Do we have any incentives for these people to connect besides just a payback or what?
Currently, the only thing we have is that if you do a sewer extension, there's an opportunity for you to get a payback. I think that has been a point of discussion here at the commission the last few times we've had somebody come in for an exception. I'll tell you, city management's position is that the payback is beside the point. Since it is a potential public health issue, that the public health sort of takes precedence, and payback is just kind of a bread and butter thing if you can get it. But it's there. It's in our policy. But we don't have anything right now that encourages or coerces or anything for people to connect to the sewer.
Do we know the current county regulation for connecting? Is there none? Is just purely at their discretion, or is there a certain footage? That
Well, the one thing to point out is that outside of the Kingman's water and sewer service area, there's almost no sewer in the rest of the county. There's a few little places here and there.
Okay.
But within our water and sewer service area, I want to say their threshold is 250 feet.
100.
100?
Yep.
Yeah.
Last I read it, 100.
Right.
Changed it.
And this was a decision that the previous development services director made that was supposed to be based on trying to sort of equal out the cost of getting a septic system versus connecting to the sewer. Costs have gone way up. I think the cost of putting in a septic system is about $15,000 these days. You can't do anything as far as sewer goes for $15,000, especially if you have to put in a manhole. So, because a manhole's like $7,500. So, anyway, if you have to go more than 100 feet, for sure, you're going to spend more than $15,000. But that's all I've got. I don't know if you guys want to discuss it more or just ask for another report or ask for more information, or maybe that would be up to the commission.
As a commission, do we feel we need more discussion or any further actions?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
From staff, do we feel that there's a need to make any adjustments, or are we going to leave it essentially as status quo?
I think what I'd like to do is probably continue my discussions with city management, and then maybe I could bring something to the commission to look at, that maybe we could adapt some new language to the regs or something.
Okay. Thank you, staff, for the report. If there's no further discussion around that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, announcements by commission members. Do we have any announcements that needs to come forward?
Before you go on that, Chairman, I'm meeting with Tim on Tuesday, and I will bring this up to him about incentives and what possibilities we have with that. You got people with mobile homes, you got people with houses. septic tanks are, is talking about the annual, assessment. That would simplify everything if the city can think of some way to do that. So I will be bringing that up next week.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, item number 6 on the agenda is requests for future agenda items and updates. Do we have any requests?
No.
This time? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a second. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Meeting adjourned.